it's about, and truth be told.
Shut up!
One of these opened the same weekend as Titanic and vanished after a single week, despite being one of the finest American films of the decade. One was dumped into limited release by a studio that had no idea what to do with it and has since become a cult masterpiece. And one made less than $1 million at the box office and is now taught in film schools as essential viewing.
What do they do?
Crafts. Wanda does these photographic.
Number 11, The Sweet Hereafter, 1997. Adam Egoyan made this one for Ego Film Arts and Alliance Communications with a budget of approximately $5 million and delivered one of the most emotionally devastating examinations of grief and community trauma ever committed to film. The film follows a small town after a school bus accident kills most of its children, and a lawyer played by Ian Holm, who arrives to organize a class action lawsuit against anyone who might be held responsible. The film was released in December 1997, the same month Titanic opened and consumed all available theatrical oxygen for the following 6 months. The Sweet Hereafter played limited release in art houses, while Titanic was selling out multiplexes nationwide. The film made approximately $3 million at the domestic box office, which against its modest budget was not a disaster, but represented a fraction of the audience it deserved. Critics recognized its achievement immediately, giving it overwhelmingly positive reviews, but the commercial landscape was completely dominated by James Cameron's epic, and there was simply no room in the cultural conversation for a quiet Canadian film about grief. What makes The Sweet Hereafter extraordinary is Egoyan's structural decision to tell the story out of chronological order, moving between past and present, between before the accident and after, creating a fractured narrative that mirrors how trauma actually operates in memory. The audience understands what happened before the characters do. The suspense comes not from what will occur, but from watching people move toward catastrophe that has already been revealed. That technique creates a specific kind of dread that conventional chronological storytelling cannot achieve. Sarah Polley gives one of the finest performances by a teenager in 1990s cinema, playing Nicole, a young survivor whose testimony will determine whether the lawsuit succeeds, and whose relationship with her father contains secrets that complicate every attempt to assign blame or find meaning in random tragedy. The film refuses to provide catharsis or resolution. The accident happened, the children are dead, and the community must continue existing with that knowledge. Some find meaning, others find nothing. The film presents both responses without judgment. The cinematography by Paul Sabrasi uses the British Columbia winter landscape to create visual bleakness that matches the emotional devastation. All snow and gray sky and empty roads where the bus crashed. The film won the Grand Prix at Cannes and received 2 Academy Award nominations, including Best Director, which brought it some attention, but it never found the mainstream audience that its quality warranted because 1997 belonged entirely to Titanic. To number 10, In the Company of Men, 1997.
Relationship shit we're dealing with. I mean, think about it.
No, right. I mean, it's funny. It is. It's just.
I hate that dude right there. Craig or Greg? One of those from Pittsburgh. Oh, he sucks dick.
Neil LaBute made this one for Alliance Atlantis Communications with a budget of approximately $25,000. Shot it on 16mm film in 11 days, and delivered the most uncomfortable and most honest examination of toxic masculinity and corporate cruelty that American independent cinema produced in the 1990s. Aaron Eckhart plays Chad, a middle management sociopath who convinces his colleague Howard to join him in a scheme to seduce a deaf woman, make her fall in love with both of them, and then dump her simultaneously as revenge against all women for their own romantic failures. The film premiered at Sundance in January 1997 and generated immediate controversy. Some critics called it misogynistic, Others recognized it as a dissection of misogyny rather than an endorsement. The debate generated substantial festival attention, but Sony Pictures Classics, which acquired distribution rights, had no idea how to market something this deliberately unpleasant and gave it minimal theatrical release. The film made approximately $2,700,000 domestically, which on its microscopic budget was profitable, but represented complete commercial invisibility. What makes In the Company of Men so disturbing is LaBute's refusal to soften Chad, or to provide redemptive arc or comeuppance. Chad executes his plan, destroys the woman emotionally, betrays his friend Howard, and succeeds professionally because his complete lack of empathy is perfectly suited to corporate advancement. The film ends with Chad promoted and planning his next cruelty while his victims suffer. That nihilistic conclusion was too much for mainstream audiences expecting conventional morality tales where evil is punished. Aaron Eckhart's performance as Chad is genuinely frightening because he plays the character as completely self-aware and completely comfortable with his own monstrosity. Chad is not delusional about what he is doing or why. He understands he is causing suffering for his own amusement, and he continues because he enjoys it. And because he correctly understands that his behavior will be rewarded rather than punished in corporate environments that value aggression over ethics. The film was shot for essentially nothing and looks appropriately cheap. All fluorescent office lighting and bland conference rooms, and the generic spaces where most people spend their working lives. That aesthetic authenticity makes the cruelty more rather than less effective, because it grounds the horror in recognizable everyday environments rather than in heightened dramatic contexts. Number 9, Safe. 1995.
That's exactly what I said, isn't it? I knew that whole fruit thing didn't make any sense.
But, basically,
Todd Haynes made this one for American Playhouse and Good Machine, with a budget of approximately $1 million, and delivered the most prescient film about environmental illness, about the medicalization of suffering that has no clear organic cause, and about how contemporary capitalism makes people sick in ways that science cannot diagnose and medicine cannot treat. Julianne Moore plays Carol White, an affluent San Fernando Valley housewife who begins experiencing mysterious symptoms, including nosebleeds, breathing difficulties, and seizures that doctors cannot explain, and that gradually make her unable to function in normal environments. The film was released by Sony Pictures Classics in limited release in June 1995, the same month Apollo 13, Batman Forever, and Pocahontas dominated the box office. Safe made approximately $477,000 theatrically, which even accounting for its tiny budget represented complete commercial failure. Critics who saw it recognized something genuinely original, but the film was too slow, too ambiguous, and too resistant to conventional dramatic satisfaction to find audiences beyond the dedicated art house circuit. What makes Safe so disturbing is Haynes' commitment to never confirming whether Carol's illness is real or psychosomatic, whether she is experiencing genuine environmental sensitivity, or whether her symptoms are manifestations of psychological distress that affluent women in the 1990s had no acceptable framework for expressing. The film supports both interpretations simultaneously and refuses to resolve the ambiguity, because the ambiguity is the point. Contemporary medicine cannot address suffering that has no clear organic cause, so it dismisses that suffering as psychological, which does nothing to relieve it. Moore's performance is one of the great portraits of someone disappearing into illness, her voice becoming quieter, her presence becoming smaller, her ability to exist in the world systematically contracting until she ends up in a New Age treatment facility in the desert, living in an isolation chamber, because every aspect of normal civilization makes her sick. The film ends with Carol alone in her sterile safe room, as telling her reflection that she loves herself. And the image is so profoundly sad that it becomes almost unbearable. The cinematography by Alex Nepomniachtchi uses long static shots and careful geometric compositions that make Carol's affluent environment feel sterile and toxic, long before her symptoms manifest. The film suggests that the illness is environmental, but that the environment in question is not just chemical pollutants, but the entire structure of contemporary suburban existence, the isolation and the meaninglessness, and the complete disconnection from anything resembling an authentic human community. Number 8. Dead Man, 1995.
Fret much about, and truth be told.
Shut up!
Jim Jarmusch made this one for 12-gauge Productions with a budget of approximately $9 million and delivered the strangest, most formally radical Western ever made by an American director, a film that used genre conventions as framework for exploring death, violence, and the complete moral bankruptcy of American westward expansion. Johnny Depp plays William Blake, an accountant who travels west for employment, and within hours is wounded, becomes an outlaw, and begins a journey toward death, guided by a Native American named Nobody, played by Gary Farmer, who believes Blake is the reincarnation of the poet William Blake. Miramax acquired the film, and then apparently had no idea what to do with something this weird and this unmarketable. The film received extremely limited release in May 1996, and made approximately $1,100,000 domestically, which against its $9 million budget was a catastrophic failure. Critics were sharply divided. Some recognized it as genuinely visionary. Others found it pretentious and boring. The audience that might have appreciated it never found it, because Miramax gave it essentially no marketing support. What makes Dead Man extraordinary is Jarmusch's complete rejection of Western genre conventions in favor of something closer to spiritual allegory. The violence is sudden and unheroic. Blake kills people without becoming a better gunfighter or a more capable survivor. He simply becomes more dead with each encounter. The film is structured as a journey toward death, rather than toward redemption or revenge. And that journey is depicted with the same patient observation Jarmusch brings to his contemporary films about people sitting in diners or riding trains. The black and white cinematography by Robbie Mueller renders the American West as genuinely alien landscape, all harsh contrasts and deep shadows and forests that feel primordial rather than picturesque. The film looks nothing like any other Western, and that visual estrangement mirrors the narrative's estrangement from genre expectations. This is not the West of John Ford or Sergio Leone. This is the West as death machine, consuming everyone who enters it. Neil Young's electric guitar score, improvised while watching the film, creates a sonic landscape of feedback and distortion that makes even quiet scenes feel unsettling. The music is not accompaniment, it is active participant in creating the film's atmosphere of dread and displacement. Number 7. The Rapture, 1991.
That's something. I think we can love each other. And I think you feel that too.
This operator 134, what city, please? Is that a business or residence?
Michael Tolkien wrote and directed this one for New Line Cinema with a budget of approximately $3 million, and delivered the most serious American film ever made about religious belief. About what happens when someone genuinely accepts apocalyptic Christianity as literal truth, and about the specific horror of discovering that God exists and that God is exactly as cruel and arbitrary as the Bible suggests. Mimi Rogers plays Sharon, a telephone operator who lives a life of casual hedonism, including swinging and group sex, who experiences genuine religious conversion, who begins living according to strict Christian principles, and who eventually faces a test of faith so extreme that it destroys her and her family. The film was released in limited release in October 1991, the same month Terminator 2 was still dominating theaters and The Fisher King and Frankie and Johnny were opening wide. The Rapture made approximately $1,200,000 theatrically and vanished almost immediately. The religious content alienated secular audiences who found the premise absurd. The film's refusal to provide comfortable answers about faith alienated religious audiences who wanted affirmation rather than interrogation. Nobody knew what to do with a film that took Christianity completely seriously and used that seriousness to ask genuinely difficult questions. What makes The Rapture so disturbing is its commitment to depicting religious belief as literally true within the film's reality. The rapture actually happens. The apocalypse actually arrives. God actually exists and actually judges humanity exactly as evangelical Christianity predicts. And Sharon, who has given up everything to follow God, discovers that obedience does not guarantee salvation and that God's justice is indistinguishable from God's cruelty. The film asks what happens when you get exactly what religion promises and discover it is a nightmare. Mimi Rogers gives the performance of her career, taking Sharon from hedonistic emptiness through genuine spiritual awakening to absolute despair as she understands what her faith actually demands. The final sequences, in which Sharon refuses to enter heaven because she cannot worship a God who would require what has been required of her, are among the most theologically sophisticated and most emotionally devastating in American cinema. The film suggests that the proper response to the Christian God, if that God actually exists as described, is not worship, but rebellion. Number 6. The Thin Red Line. 1998.
Does your confidence lie in this?
Terrence Malick made this one for Fox, 2,000 Pictures and Phoenix Pictures, with a budget of approximately $52 million after a 20-year absence from filmmaking, and delivered the most philosophical and most formally radical war film ever produced by a major Hollywood studio. The film follows Charlie Company's assault on a Japanese-held hill on Guadalcanal, but the combat is constantly interrupted by voiceover meditations on nature, death, and the relationship between violence and creation. Jim Caviezel, Sean Penn, Nick Nolte, and an ensemble cast of dozens move through jungle warfare that Malick shoots with the same patient observation he brings to wheat fields and sunlight. The film was released on Christmas Day 1998, directly against Patch Adams' You've Got Mail, and most devastatingly against Saving Private Ryan, which had opened in July and was being positioned for Academy Award nomination as the definitive World War II film. The Thin Red Line made approximately $98 million worldwide, which seems respectable until you account for the budget and marketing costs and recognize that Saving Private Ryan made over $480 million and completely dominated the cultural conversation about war cinema. What makes The Thin Red Line genuinely radical is Malick's refusal to structure it as conventional war narrative with clear protagonists, rising action, and dramatic climax. Characters appear, deliver philosophical monologues, and disappear. The battle for the hill takes hours of screen time and feels like watching grass grow, interrupted by sudden violence. Soldiers contemplate birds in sunlight while people die around them. The film operates according to contemplative rather than dramatic logic, which made it almost impossible for mainstream audiences trained on Spielberg's propulsive storytelling. The voiceover narration, delivered by multiple characters, including soldiers who will die moments later, creates a collective consciousness rather than individual perspective. The film is not about any single person's war experience, but about the collision between human consciousness and industrial death, between the beauty of the natural world and humanity's compulsion to destroy. That philosophical ambition made critics and filmmakers recognize it as a masterpiece, while general audiences found it baffling and boring. Hans Zimmer's score uses minimalist strings and Melanesian choirs to create a soundscape that emphasizes transcendence rather than tension. The music does not guide emotional response. It creates contemplative space around the violence, making the combat feel less like action and more like tragedy being observed from a great distance. The film received 7 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture and Best Director, but won nothing. Saving Private Ryan won 5 Oscars. The cultural consensus treated Malick's film as interesting failure, while Spielberg's became the standard against which all war films would be measured. The Thin Red Line made too much money to be called a commercial failure, but it was absolutely buried by the blockbuster it was positioned against, and its reputation has had to be rebuilt slowly through critical reassessment and through younger filmmakers recognizing its influence. Number 5. Dark City, 1998.
There's a family for him, friends, an entire history, even a lost wallet. Then they observe the results. The rich get richer. Probably have.
Alex Proyas made this one for New Line Cinema and Mystery Clock Cinema with a budget of approximately $27 million and delivered the most visually inventive and most philosophically sophisticated science fiction film of the decade. Rufus Sewell plays John Murdoch, who wakes in a hotel room with no memory and discovers he is being hunted by mysterious figures called the Strangers, who can stop time and reshape reality. The film depicts a city where night never ends, where buildings and memories are reconstructed nightly, and where human identity itself is revealed as artificial construct imposed by alien experimenters. The film was released in February 1998, with minimal marketing support from New Line, which had no idea how to sell something this dark and this weird to mainstream audiences. It made approximately $27 million worldwide, barely recovering its production budget and losing money after marketing costs. The timing was particularly unfortunate because The Matrix would arrive 13 months later, with similar themes about reality being artificial construct, and would become one of the defining blockbusters of the era, while Dark City remained almost completely unknown. What makes Dark City extraordinary is its complete commitment to creating a fully realized dystopian environment through practical sets, miniatures, and production design, rather than through digital effects. The city itself is a character, all Art Deco architecture and perpetual night and German expressionist shadows. The visual language draws from Metropolis and from film noir, and from European art cinema, rather than from contemporary blockbusters, which made it feel genuinely alien and genuinely original in ways that mainstream science fiction rarely achieved. The film's exploration of memory and identity anticipated questions that would become central to 21st century philosophy and neuroscience. If memories can be implanted, are they less real than organic memories? If personality can be constructed, what remains of authentic self? The Strangers are dying as a species and are experimenting on humans to understand what makes individual consciousness possible. And the film suggests that the answer is not reason or memory, but something ineffable that even total control cannot replicate. Kiefer Sutherland, Jennifer Connelly, and William Hurt support Sewell in performances that match the film's heightened theatrical style. This is not naturalistic acting. It is performance suited to a world where reality itself is performance, where the city is a stage and the humans are actors who do not know they are performing for an alien audience. The film has subsequently developed devoted cult following, and is now recognized as visually influential on films, including The Matrix, Inception, and basically every science fiction film made, since that depicts constructed realities. But in 1998, it was completely buried, released with indifference by its own studio, and ignored by audiences who had no framework for understanding what Proyas was attempting. Number 4, Out of Sight, 1998.
Is your first time being around? You're doing great. Just smile, Loretta, so you don't look like you're being held up.
Stay right there. Don't move. Maurice!
Steven Soderbergh made this one for Universal Pictures based on Elmore Leonard's novel with a budget of approximately $48 million and delivered the sexiest, smartest, and most effortlessly cool crime film of the decade. George Clooney plays Jack Foley, a charming bank robber. Jennifer Lopez plays Karen Sisko, a federal marshal. They meet when Jack escapes prison and takes Karen hostage, and the film follows their attraction through non-chronological structure that mirrors how memory and desire actually operate, cutting between past and present and future possibility with fluid elegance. The film was released in June 1998, directly against Armageddon and The Truman Show, both of which opened the same weekend and completely dominated the box office. Out of Sight made approximately $77 million worldwide against its $48 million budget, which sounds acceptable until you recognize that Armageddon made over $550 million and became the year's highest grossing film, while Out of Sight was considered a commercial disappointment, that nearly ended Soderbergh's mainstream career before he made Aaron Brockovich and Traffic 2 years later. What makes Out of Sight extraordinary is Soderbergh's complete mastery of tone, maintaining perfect balance between romance and crime thriller and comedy without ever tipping too far in any direction. The famous trunk sequence, in which Jack and Karen are locked together during the escape and begin their verbal and sexual sparring, is one of the great meet-cute scenes in American cinema, precisely because it understands that attraction and danger are not opposites but complements. The film's structure, cutting constantly between the Detroit present, where Jack is planning a final job, and the Florida past, where he met Karen, and the future where their relationship will have to resolve, creates narrative complexity that most crime films avoid in favor of linear storytelling. Scott Frank's screenplay adapts Leonard's novel with complete fidelity to the author's ear for dialogue, and his understanding that criminals are not glamorous anti-heroes but working people with a specific skill set that happens to be illegal. The supporting cast, including Ving Rhames, Don Cheadle, Albert Brooks, Dennis Farina, and Steve Zahn, creates a fully populated criminal underworld that feels genuinely lived in rather than manufactured for plot purposes. These are people who have known each other for years, who have histories and grudges, and the specific shorthand that develops between colleagues in any profession. The film treats crime as work and criminals as professionals, rather than as either romanticized rebels or as sociopathic monsters. The film's ending, which refuses to provide clean resolution to Jack and Karen's relationship because their circumstances make that resolution impossible, demonstrates Soderbergh's willingness to choose emotional honesty over audience satisfaction. They want to be together. They cannot be together. The film accepts that contradiction without trying to force a solution. Number 3. A Simple Plan, 1998.
Show you his badge! What? He's got a gun! He's got a gun! He's not FBI! He's lying! He's got a gun! What are you talking about?
That's an airplane. I wonder how long it's been here.
It's probably one of those drunk doctors, you know how they're always crashing their plane, you know?
Sam Raimi made this one for Paramount Pictures and Mutual Film Company based on Scott B. Smith's novel with a budget of approximately $17 million and delivered the bleakest and most morally precise examination of how ordinary people become murderers that American cinema produced in the 1990s. Bill Paxton plays Hank Mitchell, an accountant in rural Minnesota who discovers $4 million in a crashed plane and convinces his brother Jacob and Jacob's friend Lou to keep the money. The plan is simple. Wait until spring to see if anyone looks for the money. If nobody comes, divide it and disappear. But the plan requires lies, then violence, then more violence, until everyone involved is destroyed. The film was released in December 1998 in limited release against Patch Adams, Mighty Joe Young, and the tail end of A Bug's Life's massive box office run. It made approximately $16 million domestically, barely recovering its production budget and disappearing from theaters within weeks. Critics recognized it as one of the year's finest films, but the subject matter was too dark and the ending too hopeless for audiences seeking holiday entertainment. What makes A Simple Plan so devastating is its methodical demonstration of how rational self-interest leads directly to moral catastrophe when people lack the institutional frameworks that normally constrain behavior. Hank is not evil. He is practical. He understands that keeping the money requires preventing anyone from knowing they found it, which requires lying to his wife, which requires additional lies to cover the first lies, which eventually requires killing people who ask too many questions. Each step is individually justifiable. The cumulative effect is monstrous. Billy Bob Thornton gives what is probably his finest performance as Jacob, Hank's intellectually limited brother, who understands earlier than Hank does that the money is cursed and that keeping it will destroy them. Thornton plays Jacob with such dignity and sadness that his eventual fate becomes genuinely tragic rather than merely pathetic. The brotherly relationship between Hank and Jacob, built on Hank's condescension and Jacob's awareness of that condescension, provides the emotional core that makes the film's nihilism bearable. The Minnesota winter landscape, shot by cinematographer Alar Kivilo with bleached, desaturated colors, creates visual representation of moral emptiness. Everything is white or gray or brown. Nothing is warm. The cold is not atmospheric detail. It is a thematic statement about worlds where human connection has frozen and where survival requires abandoning anyone who becomes liability. The film's ending, in which Hank has successfully kept the money but has lost his brother, his marriage, and his soul, provides no catharsis or hope. He has won, and his winning is indistinguishable from complete defeat. That refusal to provide consolation or meaning made a simple plan impossible to market to mainstream audiences and ensured its commercial burial despite critical recognition. Number 2, Eyes Wide Shut, 1999.
Men have to stick it in every place they can, but for women it is just about security and commitment and whatever the fuck.
Stanley Kubrick made this one for Warner Brothers with a budget of approximately $65 million as his final film, shooting for over 400 days and delivering the most genuinely erotic and most psychologically disturbing examination of marriage and sexual desire that major Hollywood studio has ever released. Tom Cruise plays Dr. William Harford, who discovers that his wife Alice, played by Nicole Kidman, has fantasized about infidelity with a naval officer she saw briefly years earlier. That revelation sends William on a nighttime odyssey through New York, encountering prostitutes, secret societies, and sexual scenarios that force him to recognize his own desires and his own capacity for betrayal. The film was released in July 1999 against The Blair Witch Project, American Pie, and The Sixth Sense, which would all become massive commercial and cultural phenomena, while Eyes Wide Shut made approximately $162 million worldwide, which sounds substantial until you recognize that Warner Brothers had expected $300 million based on the Cruise-Kidman pairing and Kubrick's name. The film was considered a commercial disappointment and a critical failure, with reviews divided between those who recognized it as masterpiece and those who found it boring and pretentious. What makes Eyes Wide Shut genuinely radical is Kubrick's decision to depict desire not through conventional sex scenes, but through sustained attention to looking, to wanting, to the gap between fantasy and reality. The famous orgy sequence, which was shot for weeks and which Warner Brothers digitally altered for American release by inserting CGI figures to block penetration shots, is not actually erotic in conventional sense. It is ritualistic and strange and genuinely unsettling because it depicts sex as power and as theater, rather than as pleasure. The film's structure, following William through a single night that feels like it lasts forever, creates dreamlike atmosphere where normal rules of cause and effect are suspended. He encounters the same mysterious figures repeatedly. He narrowly avoids genuine danger multiple times. And when morning arrives and he returns home to Alice, the question of what was real and what was fantasy remains unresolved. Kubrick suggests that the distinction may not matter, that fantasy and reality operate according to the same psychological logic. Tom Cruise gives one of his finest performances, playing against his movie star persona to depict a man whose confidence and control are revealed as complete performance. William believes he understands his marriage, his desires, his world. The film systematically strips away every one of those certainties until he is left with nothing except the recognition that he knows nothing about his wife or himself. The film ends with Alice telling William they should fuck, using that specific word rather than making love, or any euphemism, and that linguistic choice is crucial. They are not recovering lost intimacy. They are acknowledging that desire and love are separate, that marriage survives not through romance, but through pragmatic recognition that alternatives are equally flawed. That cold-eyed assessment of long-term relationships was too honest for audiences expecting Cruise and Kidman to provide aspirational romance. Number 1, The Iron Giant, 1999.
Oh my God! Thank you for the.
Brad Bird made this one for Warner Brothers Feature Animation with a budget of approximately $70 million and delivered what remains the most emotionally sophisticated and most formally perfect American animated film of the 1990s. The film follows Hogarth, a young boy in 1950s Maine, who befriends a giant robot from space and must protect it from a paranoid government agent who wants to destroy it as communist threat. The film is about friendship, about choosing who you want to be rather than accepting what others expect, and about Cold War paranoia destroying the things it claims to protect. The film was released in August 1999 with almost zero marketing support from Warner Brothers, which had decided animated films not made by Disney could not succeed, and consequently gave the Iron Giant minimal theatrical distribution and essentially no advertising. It made approximately $31 million worldwide, losing Warner Brothers approximately $40 million and leading the studio to shut down its feature animation division. The film was one of the biggest commercial disasters of the decade. What makes the Iron Giant extraordinary is Bird's understanding that animation allows emotional expression that live action cannot achieve, that the giant's mechanical face can convey more genuine feeling through simple design choices than elaborate photorealistic effects. The giant learns language, learns friendship, learns that guns kill and that killing is wrong, and chooses to be Superman rather than accepting programming as weapon. That arc from program destroyer to conscious moral agent is depicted with such clarity and such emotional honesty that the film's climax, in which the giant sacrifices itself to save the town, is genuinely devastating. The voice performances, particularly Jennifer Aniston as Hogarth's mother and Harry Connick Jr. as her boyfriend Dean, ground the film's fantasy in recognizable emotional reality. These are working-class people doing their best in difficult circumstances, and the film treats them with respect rather than condescension. Vin Diesel voices the giant with minimal dialogue, creating character through vocal tone and timing rather than through verbal expression. The animation itself uses traditional hand-drawn characters combined with computer-generated giant, and that hybrid approach creates visual distinction between the organic world Hogarth inhabits and the mechanical nature the giant is trying to transcend. The film looks like nothing Disney was producing, more influenced by European animation and by Brad Bird's understanding that emotional clarity matters more than technical spectacle. The film has subsequently been recognized as a masterpiece, appears on every serious list of finest animated films, and influenced a generation of animators, including those who made How to Train Your Dragon and Big Hero 6. But in 1999, it was buried by Warner Brothers' indifference and by audiences who had been trained to believe that only Disney made animated films worth seeing. These 11 films were crushed by blockbusters, abandoned by studios that didn't understand them, and ignored by audiences chasing bigger spectacles. Critics recognized several as masterpieces. None found the audiences they deserved in theaters. All of them have been vindicated by time, studied in film schools, and recognized as essential works that the 1990s buried.